The first sessions we wrote down was women's sports. And we wrote that for two reasons: for what it can teach us about leadership. And as you'll hear soon, 94% of women in the C-suite played sports. But also, maybe more interestingly, what it can teach us about innovation and change management, which I know so many of you are really interested in. This is going to be an incredible panel. Amy Scheer is the Senior Vice President overseeing business operations for the new Professional Women's Hockey League and its 6 teams. Yes, thank you for the I heard that. She's also a former executive at the NFL and Madison Square Garden, and she's held leadership roles with several New York area teams, including the Nets and the Liberty. Sara Jones Simmer is the COO of the National Women's Soccer League. Before that, she was the CEO of Found and the COO and Chief Strategy Officer of Bumble. And to moderate this conversation is Sara Haines, co-host of The View on ABC and former college athlete. Another fun fact is she is the first person who took me to a WNBA game. So go Liberty. Thank you. So please join me in welcoming to the stage Sara Haines, Amy Scheer, and Sara Jones Simmer.
Now, if I fall, you can catch me. I got you. Thank you. Okay. So we're going to jump right in since she did such a good job with the bios. Athletics and sports in my life has been big. I played sports all the way through college, volleyball and basketball. I still consider myself an athlete. My husband's like, where are you playing? So maybe that identity has stayed a little long, but I want to ask each of you, how did sports play a role in your life?
A big role. I played tennis and softball growing up, and luckily I had a dad who took me out every day to play sports, and I think it taught me so many qualities that I use for work every day, but also was in a position in New Jersey where I saw the Meadowlands Arena being built and decided one day that I had to work there. And so for me, sports, at that point, I understood when I saw the arena be built that I could maybe make a career doing this. So a ton of skills learned, whether it's leadership, whether it's communication, whether it's problem solving, but skills we all use every day.
Man, I can't wait to get into some of that in this conversation. You know, I dabbled in a lot of everything, like a lot of first and second graders do, and then swimming was the thing that really caught my attention. So I was an age group swimmer until I got to college, and then got back into it as a young professional when I was trying to figure out how to achieve balance, and got into running marathons and did an Ironman, and now have the privilege of being a mom of 2 daughters and now a young son, and watching them get into sports and finding so much of their identity in the things that they love and care about, and watching it build their confidence and their competitive edge, and learning to fail, learning to win, learning how to get back up again. So I think it's invaluable to each of our upbringing.
Well, and one thing I love about being a mom, I have 2 boys and a girl, is that they're growing up in a time where my boys and my girl are just watching women's sports, and it's very normal, which is just not what we grew up on. And right now, women's professional sports are gaining unprecedented recognition and support. So I want to ask you guys, what's exciting to each of you about your sport specifically and this moment more broadly in women's sports?
Sure. I think we're actually sitting at this intersection of 3 different converging trends. One is global interest in soccer. We've got the Men's World Cup playing on US soil in 2026. You're seeing more and more Arsenal jerseys, Chelsea jerseys running around town, in addition to obviously everything that's happening on our side. Then you've got women's sports accelerating across the board. Amy and I were just talking about the impact that Caitlin Clark has had on things outside of basketball. Then you've got changing media habits. So people are not tuning in to watch necessarily a 90-minute soccer game anymore. They're catching clips of penalty kicks on TikTok. So how do you think about these 3 things converging at the same time? Global soccer, women's sports, changing media habits. And I think we are at this really exciting moment with the NWSL of capitalizing on all of that. We are able to negotiate this brand new media deal that now has us on 4 different platforms, linear television as well as streamers. That enables us to unlock fans where they've never existed before. People that didn't know how to watch a women's soccer game, or maybe had only seen the US women's national team play in the World Cup or in the Olympics, are now able to tune in and watch games every weekend. So we're really in a moment of trying to capitalize on fan engagement, build audience, build momentum, take advantage of those 3 trends coming together, and think about how we make sure that this isn't just a moment for women's sports or a moment for soccer, but it's really building the movement with a ton of momentum and really strong tailwinds.
Yeah, and I think for hockey, we're in a position now where we're drafting a little bit off what the WNBA and the NWSL has done, but there's about 100,000 girls in the US that play hockey. And imagine if the PWHL had been around for the last 28 years, similar to the WNBA, or a decade or more like the NWSL, how many more girls would be playing hockey? Because they see that there is an end game. They see that other girls and women play hockey. So we need to be that now for the next generation of young girls. They need to understand that hockey is an accessible sport that they could play and participate in. And as our league grows, hopefully more and more girls will play as well. So we will build off of what our predecessors have started.
Well, 6% of Fortune 500 companies are league or team sponsors for the WNBA, NWSL, and PWHL, while 20% have sponsorship deals with corresponding men's leagues. But the rise in popularity of women's sports is bringing in sponsorship from startups and female-focused companies. So how are you approaching companies that you work with, and which partnerships are you most excited about right now?
We had a great partner last year in Barbie. I mean, obviously the movie came out and Barbie exploded, and I didn't understand it because I never played with dolls as a kid, but I guess a lot of people do. And and we were playing a game at Scotiabank Arena in Toronto, and I was walking around the arena, and all of a sudden I heard everybody cheer, but it was a break, and I didn't understand. And on the scoreboard, they had a big promotion around Barbie, and the crowd was cheering for Barbie. And it was the craziest reaction to a sponsorship I'd ever seen. And since then, we've collaborated with Barbie on a bunch of merchandise drops that have sold out immediately, where you have a bunch of things in store for Barbie for year 2 and year 3. So that it was what we would say a non-endemic sponsor, right? They're not a traditional sports sponsor. And that's what's cool about women's sports, is that there's a lot of companies out there that maybe don't fit in the men's space, but fit in the women's space. So while we might get some of the endemic sponsors like the Anheuser-Busch's and stuff like that, there's a whole host of other sponsors out there that fit with us, Barbie being one of many. But that's one of our fun stories.
Oh my gosh, such a good one. And I would echo that. I feel like we're actually building this bigger tent of what sponsorship can mean. And part of it, very candidly, is just that our barrier to entry is lower. It is less expensive to be a corporate sponsor of the NWSL or PWHL than it is the NBA or NFL. And that's a good thing for us because we can co-create with sponsors. We can actually build something that's meaningful for your business goals. We're able to be more nimble. And I think we are then attracting companies that don't have billion-dollar marketing budgets, but are really looking to activate with our fan base. And I think that's the other piece, is we are activating a group of fans that maybe weren't tuning in or recognizing the brand sponsors of some of these bigger leagues. And they matter to these advertisers. We're talking about women who are the chief commercial officers of their household, who are making spending decisions on behalf of their household. We are a great platform to get in front of folks like that. One of the partnerships I'm really proud of is what we do with Google Pixel, where we actually activate correspondents on the sidelines of our games who are live creating content on Pixel phones. And they are uploading that to various social channels and giving people a different way of watching the game. To my earlier point of you don't have to sit in front of your TV for 90 minutes to be a soccer fan. These things are showing up on places like Instagram stories and TikTok in real time. So much of this is about fan engagement, but now doing it through the lens of a corporate sponsor.
Yeah, and by the way, a little nugget on top of that is, in all the research, women fan differently, although I'd say our fans are about 50-50 male-female, but according to Nielsen, 75% of our fans remember the sponsor names. 65% of our fans are more loyal to go and engage with that company. So there's a loyalty and engagement that our fans will have with your company as part of our sponsor, as being a sponsor and supporting us.
Well, the economics of women's professional sports means, though, women often need to employment while they're not playing or after they retire. So I'm curious, how are your leagues addressing this with your athletes?
I would say on our side, we actually just announced that we renegotiated our collective bargaining agreement that does raise minimum salaries. It's something that we want our players to be in a position where they don't have to work a second job. But I think there is a parallel track there, which is that our athletes have had to become brand builders on their own, and they often do have side hustle. Almost feels too casual of a word for it, but they're creating content, they're creating brand endorsements for themselves, they're telling their own stories in really powerful and compelling ways, and they're able to monetize that. So I think for us, it's twofold. It's making sure that we are bringing in enough revenue as a league that we can continue to increase what we are able to pay our players, and making sure that they're well positioned to take advantage of other opportunities for wealth creation for themselves.
And I think, we're catching up. Men have had 75 years of a head start on us. We're catching up to that. And so we will get to the point where we have the media rights deals. You guys are a perfect example of that, right? Where the money's starting to come in. Yep. The more sponsors you get, the more tickets you sell, the more merch you sell. What they make is all tied to the revenue that we bring in. So as that ecosystem grows, so will their paychecks.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, Amy, this is for you. The Professional Women's Hockey League kicked off its inaugural season in January. Tell us what it's like to stand up a professional league. Which lessons are you taking from the men's league, and what are you intentionally doing differently?
Well, I looked about 20 years younger about 11 months ago, but I mean, we're built differently than the other leagues. We are a single entity structure. So Mark and Kimbra Walter, who own the Dodgers and the LA Sparks, own us. So we are a single league office and ownership of our 6 teams. So for us, it's for my job, it's great. When I need to make decisions and make change, I don't have to call up 6 independent owners. I could just make the decision and move. Or if I'm unsure, then I talk to our board. While we want to make money and move fast to that end, accessibility was more important for us. So we were able last year to put all of our games on YouTube, and people were able to see them for free. Now, while we had 3 TV partners in Canada and we had 3 in the United States, I was able to take our games and make them accessible on YouTube. No other league has done that before. We were able to change the rules of the game without having a committee. So we changed 3 or 4 rules on the hockey side. So it allows us to be more nimble. It allows us to be quick in our decision making. It allows us to be different. It allows us to be innovative. And while we are always thinking about the bottom line, we also want to think about how we are different. And YouTube and rules changes, and we're having, I think, another rule change this year that our hockey team explained the other day, but truth be told, I wasn't listening. So I don't know. This is what happened when you multitask. You're actually really only doing one thing.
I'm so glad you're in charge.
Yeah. Well, they were talking about hockey. So for us, the single entity is our big differentiator, and it allows us to just work differently within the league and with the teams. And also, a great example of that is last year, our finals were Boston and Minnesota, and Boston had a really young team and maybe a leader that was not quite ready for her job. So I took all of our New York front office and I moved them up to Boston for the week that they had the games. And so the Boston team and the New York team worked like they were one team. I put one of them in charge, and that was it. So we had 10 people working instead of 5, and that would really not happen in a normal league setting. No. But because we're one, we're able to do things like that.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting way to think about building and scaling and learning from best practices across your clubs. To Amy's point, that would never happen in a typical league and club structure. And I love that the PWHL is really innovating on even things like business model to make that happen.
Well, I want to ask Sara, NWSL is doing things differently too. For example, this summer you signed a deal with the Players Union to get rid of the draft. You're the first American professional league to do this. So how are you reimagining women's soccer and the league?
This was a really historic moment for us. And I'm so proud of our commissioner, Jessica Berman, and the Players Association and the team that worked on that. So it does give players full free agency. It means they control their destiny in terms of where they want to live and being able to advocate for their own worth. This is something no U.S. league has ever done. And we felt like it was really important for the women to do it first. Now, we have examples like European soccer that operates this way. It also enables us to really play on a global stage and get the best possible talent. But I think when you focus on creating a great on-the-field product, investing in players, investing in the quality of the game, then the commercial stuff will follow. That's how you're going to drive viewership. That's how you're going to drive media deals. Then you can take that capital and reinvest it in continuing to grow your business. So we really are trying to take a player-forward approach to that and be innovative in some of these structures that really matter for the quality of life for our players.
So I want to shift from leadership on the field to leadership in the boardroom. A study by Ernst & Young found that 94% of women in the C-suite played sports, and many leadership traits such as teamwork, resilience, strategic thinking are honed through sports. How can organizations better recognize and leverage these skills when identifying and developing future leaders?
Yeah, it's a great question. I I always love to hire athletes.
Yeah.
Because you have a competitiveness.
Yep.
You have to problem solve when you're an athlete, right? No athlete is undefeated. And so while maybe you're not always in the best position, you have to figure out how do you get out of that position, or how do you put yourself in a winning position. So you're a problem solver. Communication skills, very, very big. Leadership skills. I think also if you've ever been a captain of a team or you have been a leader on your team, how do you get the most out of your teammates, right? Like every day, you have to come with a positive attitude and make sure that your teammates know how to perform or put them in a position to be successful. And I think those are really important things as a leader. How do you take your team and put them in a position to be successful? Because they ultimately represent you and they represent your league. And so how do you get them the right resources? How do you make sure they feel comfortable asking questions, right? I make sure every one of my teammates knows that it's a sign of strength to ask a question, ask for help. And so what are the pieces of culture that you're putting in place so your teammates, whether they report to you, whether your colleagues or whatever, understand that there is room for growth, there's room to be insecure, there's room to learn, there's room to ask questions, and there's a room always for your opinion, as long as it's done in a very respectful way. So I think it's really important to lay the foundation of what's acceptable and have a wide berth for people to participate.
Yeah. I mean, I would echo the themes around competitiveness, resilience. I'll give a really specific example. I think athletes show up with a spirit of collaboration, and some of that comes from knowing how to play your position on the field. It's sort of ironic now that I work in soccer, but at my last company, we used to have a joke where when we had too many people with unclear responsibilities, that we were playing 4-year-old soccer. So like, think about it. You've seen 4-year-olds play soccer. Everyone is on the ball at the same time. And then like, what's happening over here? Nothing.
The one kid who doesn't know how to play is off to the side.
Right. But if you think about the way you grow and scale a business, you can't possibly have everyone on the same calls or in the same meetings or on the same projects at all times. But it does take some maturity of a company to figure out how to play your position on the field, to be willing to pass the ball. Hockey has this concept of the second assist, right? You're not just tracking the assist before the goal, it's the second assist before the goal. How do we build cultures that really celebrate the idea of passing to your teammates, of knowing where your position is on the field, of not feeling like you're left out of a certain strategic work stream and feeling like that lessens who you are and how you contribute. And I actually think that's a really natural part of how organizations scale, right? Like 4-year-olds actually can kind of play soccer by all being on the ball.
Can
and
they
eventually,
though?
but eventually like someone needs to become the goalkeeper, and eventually someone needs to be on offense, and you're still going to have a team of midfielders who can float. They can be attacking, they can be defending. But as a company grows, you need more specialization. And it's often your job as the coach or the seat that you sit in, helping to lead your company, to figure out what stage of maturity you are at and help the teams get more and more comfortable playing their position on the field. And I actually think a lot of these athletic frameworks really help us think about growing and scaling teams and getting comfortable learning to play your position.
Well, I also think that one of the unique parts to a team is, and I don't see it as much in professional settings, but it definitely translates on fields and courts, is really knowing the strengths of your players. Because I think when leaders hone in on what they have sitting in front of them, who does what best, not by title, but by execution, it often guides the movement of the whole group in a way that I think is better. But with the rise in both popularity and investment in women's sport, how do you think this will affect the pipeline of female leaders in the coming years?
I think it can only be a net positive. And look, I think for me, I actually spend a lot of time thinking specifically about our female soccer player pathways and how they are going to grow. But the reality is less than 1% are ever going to be professional athletes, but they are going to gain so much from the experience of playing the game, of building that resilience, learning to fail, learning to operate as a teammate, building confidence on the field that's going to translate to confidence in the boardroom, being able to communicate their ideas, being prepared for anything, right? We learn different plays so that we can be adaptable in real time. Like, these are all traits that we can take with us. I think some of it is also learning to celebrate those traits in a work environment. How do we make sure that teamwork is celebrated just as much as individual contributions? How do we start to celebrate things like the second assist, not just the person who scores the goal or gets the project across the line? So how do we build cultures that actually celebrate that type of collaboration where I do think women shine? And I'm hopeful that as we start to celebrate some of these traits that make a great athlete, and we get more and more women playing on fields, staying in their sports through things like middle school and body changes and peer pressure, so that they actually do have the chance to fully hone those skills before they get to college, before they get to the workforce. I'm hopeful that that's only a net positive.
Yeah, and I think it's not just more women in the front office, but it's where they are. So if you look at front offices across leagues and teams, you'll see most of the women in marketing, in community relations, in PR. But we need women on the sporting side. We need women on the sales side, like ticket sales and sponsorship sales, where it's traditionally men. So as more women get into the front offices, it would be good to see also the skill sets mushroom out into other corners of verticals that we work in as well.
Well, female athletes have been at the forefront of efforts to make sports more equitable and fair, something many people in this room are working on at their companies right now. So what can those battles teach us about leveling the playing field in our workplaces and society at large?
Oh, that's a good question.
I know. I'm like looking at the clock and realizing we're already over time, and like that question could go.
I wasn't looking at the clock.
You don't see the big red button.
I do this every day, and I did exactly what I do at work, and I just didn't look at the clock.
You're the professional here.
I work by a clock like that.
This is amazing.
Look, the two of us is staring at the red thing going.
Yes. No, and part of why I raised that is like.
So in short, what you were saying was
there's no easy soundbite for this, because it's really complicated work, and like pay equity has taken a long time, and we've made some strides. I'm so proud that our U.S. women's national team is now being paid what the men are. But then there are other things that you look at, like coaching salaries, that still have an enormous amount of disparity. So there isn't a quick and easy soundbite for this. It does take diligent work. It takes things like visibility, transparency, being willing to talk about these things, because we can't solve a problem that we don't accurately identify.
Yep.
I think it does take investment in trying to help swing the pendulum or level the field. And we're in this unique place in soccer, and our commissioner says this a lot, but when you think of greatness in soccer, in this country, you think of women.
Yeah.
And so we actually have the benefit of the women outperforming the men consistently internationally.
By a lot.
And for a while, they were still getting paid more. But I think it takes examples like that where you can see the excellence of the play on the field, or the excellence of someone's contributions in the workforce, and then visibility and conversations and transparency about how they are rewarded for that work. And I'm certain that everyone in this room has an important role to play in that.
We're done. So
I see the red light.
thank you. Thank you both. Thank you.
I did not even spot the clock until you pointed.